Welcome to my channel where we talk about cool cars, cool technology, and alternative fuels. Welcome back to my 1984 Lincoln Town Car. In the previous video, this vehicle had a micro-hybrid supercapacitor system on it. But today, it's got a lot more than just that. Pretty much everything has been gone through in one form or another, and I've added a lot of cool technology for us to check out. So let's jump right into it. Underneath the hood, we have more power. We have about 100 more horsepower. Took the original LoPo 5-liter out and put in this rebuilt 5-liter high output V8. Makes about 215-ish horsepower. Behind that V8 is an AODE automatic transmission instead of the original AODE mechanical transmission. The E in the AODE is electronic, so I get better, faster, smoother shifts. And of course, the engine gives me a lot more power. That drivetrain combination, if it sounds familiar, probably because it is. It's from a 94 to 95 Mustang GT. So this has a Mustang drivetrain in it. The front accessory drive is from a 97 to 01 Explorer. I chose that accessory drive because I wanted to have an upgraded power steering pump, air conditioner compressor, be able to put a big alternator on it. And while you could have done that with the 94-95 Mustang front-end kit, there were no 94-95 Mustang GTs at the time of this project in any junkyard in the city of Houston that actually had an engine in them. So I went with the Explorer front-end kit instead. The cooling system is also upgraded. It is using the trailer tow package radiator from this vehicle. The original trailer tow package style radiator. This car was not equipped with that package, but that is the radiator for it. The radiator fan and the other half of the air conditioning system that's not from an Explorer is from an 06 to 2011 Crown Vic. So I've pretty much brought at least the drivetrain into somewhat more of the modern era without going to a 4.6 liter or any kind of modular engine, which would make me have to modify the K-member and then have to change the suspension, and then I wouldn't get that nice floaty boat ride that I'm looking for. But pretty much brought it into the modern era as much as I could. More power, better cooling, air conditioning that actually works, power steering that doesn't lock up, an alternator that charges, all the good stuff. Moving back from the engine, there's a lot of goodies and upgrades inside the vehicle. Everything works, all the power windows, all the power locks, the power seats. I've gone through everything and make sure it all works. Instead of old cracked leather, got some nice new vinyl covering the original seats. The real interesting thing is, well, it's what you're about to see in the trunk. But in here, at least, it's what the things in the trunk do for the cabin. In here, we have fully electronic clusters on the left and right side, as well as the dummy lights. And the speedometer is powered by not a cable, but a servo motor behind it. So everything is electronically controlled, and most of it is digital. I wanted to bring this car into the modern era, and so I thought, what a better way to do that than put some digital clusters in it. It actually fits really well with the design. You can see that the cluster in here is square. Nice 1980s square cluster, and so it fits the screens perfectly. On the left-hand side, we've got tach and speed. In the middle, I've got my analog speedometer, of course, because I wanted at least some analog gauges. And on the right side, you got fuel and engine temperature. There's a lot of other things in here, one of them being this tablet right here. This tablet allows me to have navigation, control the radio, various other vehicle functions. I can actually add a chip in the trunk that allows this tablet to control whatever I want it to in the vehicle. I don't have that chip installed because it works off Bluetooth, and this tablet only has one Bluetooth card in it, and it's being used for the infotainment system right now. And really, with all the space I have in here to put buttons and the configurability with the BCM that I built, which we'll talk about, I really don't need to use the tablet to control anything in the vehicle. I also wanted to put blind spot monitoring on this car. It's a beast to drive, and I figured blind spot monitoring would be a nice feature. So I looked into ultrasonic sensors, radar sensors, all kinds of sensors. But then, I really realized that I don't like those kinds of systems. They're used on a lot of modern cars, and I really never had good luck with them. It might tell me if there's somebody next to me, or it might be a concrete wall, or it might just not decide to work when there's somebody next to me. So I went with this, which is a camera system. I've got blind spot cameras. I can see exactly who's beside me, where they are in real time, and I get the benefit of being able to record this footage as a dash cam. I took inspiration from Hyundai Kia on this one. I know they have the cameras in the cluster, but because of the way the cluster's shaped on this one, it was better to put the cameras over here, I discovered. But it's the same sort of idea, blind spot cameras for blind spot monitoring. So, now that you've seen the electronical, interesting stuff inside, I'll take you back to the back and show you what powers it all. This is the electronics rack for the town car. Everything in the vehicle, from the power windows, to the locks, to the keyless entry, to the tablet, to the radio, the clusters, engine controls, starter, every single switch except the rear passenger dome lights is somehow connected to this thing back here. This is pretty much a BCM, an instrument controller module, or instrument cluster module, and an infotainment module, all in one back here. I've got three Arduino Megas and 2 Raspberry Pis crammed underneath there. The Raspberry Pis do the screens. The Arduinos control all the body functions, all the body control, do all kinds of, they do the math for the speedometer, for the tachometer, for the fuel, for the temp. They do all that. They also drive the 4 relay boards over to the side there, and those relay boards are the outputs for everything that control all the different lights and, antenna, interior lighting, everything. Controls that. And on the very far left over there are just a bunch of bus bars where everything connects, and there are a lot of wires. There are a little over 100 circuits in this vehicle, and circuits not fuse numbers, but circuits of wires going out, wires coming in for a specific function. Over to the right hand side, we have just a gray box. Inside the gray box is a couple of different things. There is a module that allows me to bring in a little bit of the Grand Marquis project. The Grand Marquis project, if you haven't checked it out, is a project that I did where I pretty much made everything in a Mercury Grand Marquis controlled by Amazon Alexa. So I brought a few of those features over, like ones you'd actually want to use outside the vehicle, like lock, unlock, remote start, remote disable, and put them into this vehicle using the different little chips in that box, along with keyless entry, remote entry, so actually pushing a button on the remote, is all housed in that box. Mounted to the side of it is a Arduino Uno. That is actually the tachometer controller. The tachometer in this was given me fits, and my solution was actually to put a separate Arduino with a little circuit board on it with an opto-isolator to count the pulses as the distributor went around. That is a solution that worked for me, and so that's why that module is there. Behind that, you can't really see, is the power distribution. So fuse box, power converter from 12 volts to 5 volts, because all electronics run on 5 volts, and then right behind that gray box is a DVR for all the cameras. I've got 8 cameras around the vehicle. You saw 3 inside, but there's 8 all the way around working as dash cams, and then I can also access those from a phone if I so choose. I have that disabled right now, specifically for the reason of not using a lot of data. This also has a 4G hotspot buried in there, and I want to make sure that I have enough data for internet radio, navigation, and remote commands, and so I have the cameras turned off. Their main function is the blind spot and just being a dash cam. But if I wanted to, I could certainly access those remotely. Now you might notice the big giant batteries left and right. Those are Trojan T105 batteries. they are wired in series to give me 12 volts because they're 6 volts apiece. You might be wondering why 6 volts and why 2 of them. Well, there's 2 of them because they are 6 volts, and I went with 6 volts to give me a higher capacity. I keep a lot of these electronics alive even when the car is off, so the Raspberry Pis stay booted up so that when you start it up, you don't have to wait for 3 minutes until your cluster comes alive. It's right there ready to go, and so that when you're approaching the vehicle, it can actively detect the key fob in your pocket and turn the lights on, open the doors, or unlock them. And so I keep everything powered. And that uses quite a bit of electricity, and so I need higher capacity batteries in order to do that. They'll stay charged for a couple days without running it. But if I have it parked, I just keep it on a battery charger. Or if I don't have a battery charger handy or don't have access to power, I have a 100-watt solar panel that I just put out behind the car on the trunk, fits conveniently kind of on the trunk lid, and that will keep the batteries charged up as well. Now, if I were to park it and can't put the solar panel out and don't have electricity, it's not just going to go crazy and then everything, shut down and be a terrible mess to try to get going again. It will simply notice that battery voltage is dropping, and it has an automatic battery disconnects the batteries, and you will have plenty of power next time you come to start the vehicle. It shuts it off well before it will run out of power to start the engine, and you can successfully start your engine. Part of that system that allows you to start the engine even when the batteries are a little bit low is the same supercapacitor that was in this vehicle before, but it's serving a different purpose. It's in the fender right here, right in the inner fender there. And right now what it does, instead of being a source of power for constant starting and stopping, or constantly starting the engine when it was in micro hybrid use, it is now there so that when the batteries are low, I have enough amperage to be able to start the engine. If your batteries are sitting at 11 volts, that might not be able to start the engine alone. But a capacitor at 11 volts can provide a lot more current than a battery at that state of charge, and so that allows me to start the engine when the batteries are drained down a little bit. So that's the function of the supercapacitor, so bringing different aspects of a couple different projects into this one. This took me about, really about 6 months to build. A little bit longer if you consider the bugs along the way, but for building it and initial R&D, programming it, learning how to program, took about 6 months to do, just working on it when I had time. Welcome to the ride-along of the 1984 Lincoln Town Car. In this part, I'll be showing all the different features from the driver's point of view. So we'll start with the first thing is, when you get in the vehicle, you have several different options to access the vehicle. One is keyless entry, so you can walk up to the car with the key fob in your pocket. I have that turned off right now just for the purposes of showing the other 2 methods of entry. One is just simply by pushing the button. You'll see that the lock's open there. I can also lock it back. We get the horn honk. I can also, through my phone with the Amazon Alexa app, I can unlock the doors. There we are. I can unlock the doors, and there they go. They unlock. I can lock them. I can also remote start from the key fob or from the phone, as well as disable the vehicle remotely from the key fob or the phone. So we'll go ahead and hop in and take it for a drive. So now that we're in the vehicle, you might be wondering why, when I was mentioning the Amazon Alexa app, I didn't speak to it like you normally would for Alexa. That's because Alexa can't understand me very well, so I just push the button in the app. But now that we're in the vehicle, we'll go ahead and fire it up. And I have it set up where you manually start it with a key. There's also an option that I worked on where you can just open the door with the key in your pocket, get in, and as soon as you hit the brake, the engine will start for you. I didn't go with that option specifically because I just wanted a manual key. So it drives like any other vehicle. You just put it down into gear. No fancy electronics that you have to worry about. It manages them all for you. Of course, you saw the screens in the previous video, but we'll show those a little bit as we're driving here and there. I guess a feature I should show, a couple of features I should show before we get started. One is the climate control system. There's been some changes, both electrically and mechanically. I mentioned that there's a different blower motor and with that evaporator and also different compressor on the engine. but specifically with how it's controlled. Originally, the slider here for temperature there, that was vacuum operated. I converted that to cable operated. Now why not make it electrically operated? Why not put the little stepper motor from like a late model Crown Vic or something on the airbox and then just have it driven from back there? Well, that's because those stepper motors really like to break, and there's nothing simpler than a cable. And even in the 55 F100, the cables still work to this day. It's a design that really doesn't fail, so I went with cable operation on that. But then with the other portion, the slider down below that controls where the air goes and if you have air conditioning on or not, there's been a few modifications. One is that you can actually, if you bring this over to off, it will shut the air conditioner compressor off. And originally it would shut the blower fan off, but it will keep the blower fan on now. Only the switch on the left controls the blower fan, and that's so that you can get defrost without running the air conditioner compressor. When you put it in defrost mode, normally the air conditioner compressor kicks on because you want to defrost the windshield. But if for whatever reason you want either defroster or floor vents, because they're tied together, you can run that without having to have the air conditioner compressor on. It's a feature I wanted. Sometimes I find it useful, and so I put it in. Also, if you know a lot about these cars, you'll notice that there's a Lincoln badge here, or more specifically that there's a lack of an antenna control switch. Behind this is actually a slot for an antenna control switch. This car didn't come with the upgraded sound package, so there's no antenna switch. So actually, if you push the air conditioning control to automatic, it's not actually automatic climate control, because like I said, this is cable operated, so there's no way for it to be automatic climate control. But I'm not sure if the camera can quite see, but back there, and then when the switch is in auto, if I step on the brake pedal, antenna goes down. Originally, there was no way to roll down the antenna with the vehicle running. Had to shut the car off and then it would go down. So then I wanted a way to roll it down if I wanted to just bring it down for like putting the car cover on or something like that with the engine running. And so I set it up to work with the automatic climate control switch, and I'm able to do that because, again, of the BCM, I can just go in and say this switch input goes to this function output. Bring the antenna back up, I just set the climate control switch to something other than auto, and then the antenna will go back up back there, and it just went back up. Now, another interesting feature is the cruise control. This car is not, it was originally, it's not equipped right now with cruise control. It's not a feature I find very useful, and so I decided to do something else with the cruise control buttons. These on the right-hand side are just for whatever function. They're empty right now. They are connected, but they don't do anything. The on-off over here, on the other hand, if I push on, I don't know if you can hear, but we have cutouts. And I'll rev it up a little bit, and I'll let you hear a little bit later outside what it actually sounds like. But this is the control for the cutouts. A nice hidden way to have the cutouts, and you just push off to close them back again. Again, the control system back there allows me to do that. This is just actually just has one wire, and there's a different resistor value for each button. So the system back there is able to just read the resistor value. I can use it just like a normal toggle switch. A few other features. It now has an upgraded, I'll turn the steering wheel so you might be able to see it here, upgraded wipers, specifically in the department of the delay wipers. So initially, or originally, it was electromechanical. There's a little module that you turn this knob and it varied the resistance to charging a capacitor and all kinds of crazy stuff. And eventually, possibly, maybe sometimes the wipers would work or get stuck in your view or just not work at all. So I connected the potentiometer here to the control system in the back, and now it is digitally controlled at, I think there's 3 or 4 different positions for different, I think like 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds, and 10 seconds, that sounds right, for the different time intervals. And then of course you got the low and the high, just like normal. Another feature is the flash to pass. So most cars nowadays have where you can pull the bright light stalk back towards you, and it'll, flash the bright lights. Now this car didn't originally have that, and when you pull the stalk back, it just clicks once, bright lights are on, clicks once, bright lights are off. what I've done is if you click it fast, like that, you get a bright light flash. And you can actually see, I don't know if the glare is going to be bad, but right there, above the speedometer, see a little bright light flash? If you flick it twice, it'll flash. And what you're doing, of course, is just pull it once, turn them on, pull it once, it turns them off, and you're just doing that rapidly. But originally, you couldn't do that with the headlights off. Now I've got it set up, because everything's controlled by the system in the back. It says headlights are off, but looks like I'm getting a bright light pulse from the switch, flash the bright lights, and it does it. That pretty much covers everything interesting in here. I guess I'll show the cluster a little bit later when the glare is a little bit less. Oh yes, one more thing. The defroster, the rear defroster specifically, originally this was also electromechanically controlled. Some little tiny chip in here, and a relay, and a latching relay, all kinds of weird stuff. It didn't work, so now you push that, it turns the defroster on for 10 minutes, or until you shut the car off. Pretty simple on that one. There is an upgraded radio, nothing special about that. It is just an aftermarket radio that fits pretty well, and that connects via Bluetooth, and then it can connect to the tablet or the system via Bluetooth. So nothing too spectacular there. I think we're ready for our drive. Here we go. So as we're driving along, there is certainly no compromise in ride quality. I mentioned that yesterday with the engine choice, that I didn't want to have to go with a 4.6 liter engine, because that would compromise at least the front suspension. There is no compromise in ride quality from anything I've done, from any of the added weight or the different engine or anything like that. Now we're going to pull off into some neighborhoods here so that you can take a look at the cluster in action with all the different gauges and everything working. If you noticed yesterday, or at least for me it was yesterday when I was filming, for you it was just a few moments ago, the cluster with the screen in the left cluster with the tachometer, even with the engine off, the tachometer appeared to be reading like just kind of bouncing around between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM. Not sure why that does that. It's an issue with the engine management system that, straight, the 94, 95 Mustang GT engine management system. The coil has these like phantom fires. It'll fire randomly with the engine off. Runs perfect with the engine on, indicates perfect with the engine on, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you were wondering why the tachometer was all over the place, something weird about these 94, 95 Mustang EEC IV systems. I looked it up. It kind of just is a weird problem that sometimes happens with aftermarket coils. So I don't see too many cars. We'll pull off here onto an even more of a side road, and I'll let you take a look at the cluster as we're driving. So now, see here the cluster. There we are. It's a little glary. I'll see if I can cover it there. So as we accelerate, you can see our speedometer goes up, tachometer goes up, digital speedometer. Engine is just below operating temperature. We got a little over half a tank of fuel. So that is that. You can see over here a little bit. Well, you can't see, unfortunately, because of the glare. But there are no warning lights. Everything is working as it should. If you notice the odometer, and you're wondering why the odometer seems to be reading some numbers that don't make sense, or just kind of in the middle of some numbers, the real odometer is in the trunk. There's a tripometer that's digital on the left cluster, and the original mechanical odometer is disconnected because, like I said, the actual needle is now driven by a servo. So I thought about putting a little tiny 8x1 LCD in there, but I just decided, well, I'll just go ahead and put the real odometer in the back, and I'll just give you a tripometer right here. That seems to work well for me anyway. So also another feature, a very useful feature, is maybe not on a 2-lane road, but on a road where you'd have people in your blind spot, is the blind spot monitoring system. So hopefully you can see there, the camera feed's coming in live. I leave the backup camera up just so I can see what's behind me. Okay, hopefully the glare is at least a little bit better. And we are now going to do an acceleration run. So if you remember, I talked about the high output V8 engine. Well, this is where its benefit comes into the equation. Instead of having to hope that you get up to enough speed that you can merge onto the highway, now I can merge with confidence onto the highway. So here we go. Small brake torque, of course no traction control, doesn't even have that. And here we go. Second gear, and 60 miles an hour. See, no problem. Not struggling, no issues, gets right on up to speed. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day.